All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining today's session on real world discovery. And my name is Julia Legasto, and I'm part of the team here at Own Academy. And I'm just so excited and ecstatic to just have you all here to listen in. Very quickly, while we're waiting for more people, and I just would want to give a shout out to our entire community, to everybody who is to watching this now and about to watch this in the future. Thank you so much. We are Own Academy, and we are an educational events company. And what we do is we provide real world experiences that enrich academic learning. Basically, this is created and crafted by different companies and also professionals, and all of their experiences, their lessons, the things that they have learned and brought about, a lot of the technical insights they have today are all ways in which we would like our learners or students to learn from, so that they feel future-proof and prepared as they come into a rapidly changing world. So that's really exciting. And what we have today is called Real World Discovery. Real World Discovery is Own Academy's online career exploration series, featuring experts from different modern industries. And these live sessions allow students to interact with different experienced professionals and gain insights to help them decide what careers to pursue in the future, and also learn what it takes to thrive in the real world. So we have different types of sessions every other week. And this week, I'm very excited to talk about business and hospitality. And it will really mainly revolve around crafting memorable guest experiences. So today we're going to delve into that world as we explore that art of crafting unforgettable experiences. In this engaging session, we'll also discover the intersection of the business acumen and hospitality industry's unique blend of service and innovation as well. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a hospitality enthusiast, this webinar promises valuable insights and strategies to elevate your guest service game to the next level. And it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Her name is Helena Deparis. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Helena. So I'll just quickly introduce you before I, come and get to know you even further on a more personal and then on a professional level as well. But basically, Helena, for everybody's knowledge, she's an accomplished professional with a career spanning over 7 years within the prestigious Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group. She embodies the epitome of luxury, hospitality, and consistently delivers exceptional guest experiences. She also currently holds a senior concierge officer position as well. She has an impressive career within various hotel groups, and this is a testament to her unwavering passion for business hospitality and her commitment to upholding the highest standards of service. Of course, she's also continuously a driving force in maintaining, at least from what everybody should know by now, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group's legacy in Hong Kong and beyond. So thank you so much for joining us today, Helena. I'm just going to quickly, get to know you on a more personal level for the sake of our audience here. I believe that it's always so important to be able to engage in a conversation with you first before anything else, before even deep diving into what you know and in problem solving and in technical insights. I think it's so important to get to know your story as well first. So yeah, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, so I'll very quickly ask you a couple questions. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself before we start.
Sure, of course. So my background is that my dad is French and my mom is Argentinian, but I grew up my whole life in Asia. So I was raised in Macau for 15 years, and then I went to high school in Thailand. And after that, I decided to come to Hong Kong to study for university and to work. So my whole life has been in Asia. I've never lived in Europe. I still haven't taken that step to go to Europe and to work there, but that's some place in the future. So being a European in Asia is, it started off as a very small community in Macau. And so we grew up with so many different people from all around the world and quite an international community. And it really set up my mindset towards internationalism and globalism with our peers, and just being someone who is aware of different cultures and who adapts as well to different people and different cultures. Yeah.
So cool. And yeah, I know that, you bring in such a good highlight. Like, you really honor this part of your story. But I know that at one point it was also very challenging. So maybe you can share with us the challenges of, more of the challenges of what you had to face coming into a totally different environment. And how did you get into your industry? How did you deep dive into getting in here?
Yeah. So, you know, I think being a foreigner in an Asian country, you have to really remind yourself that number one, you're a guest at the end of the day, and you have to respect others. And the biggest challenge for me when I started working was that people didn't really expect much from me because they maybe thought that I was, riding on something that I hadn't really done the work before. And so having to spend time and many years to gain that respect and to show people that you're really there to work as a team,
Wow.
that takes a lot of time and effort. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges that you face when you are in a society and in a country that is different from your home country. But honestly, I never lived in France. I never lived in Argentina. So this is where I feel most at home. And I actually take on the social norms and the outlooks as more as an Asian than as a European, which helps, when it comes to working in a company in Asia. Um, as you were asking before, how did I get into the industry? Well, honestly, I think like a lot of kids my age, when I was in high school, I had no idea what I really wanted to do.
Right,
Um,
right.
but first of all, I didn't look at this as a negative thing. I just thought to myself, well, this is great. I have a completely blank slate and I can choose anything at this point because I haven't set myself up for anything in particular. So just look at it as a positive thing if you're not really sure. And from there, you have to keep an open mind. And for me, I took the time to join various sessions by different business representatives that were coming to our school.
Wow.
And when the representative from the hospitality school in Switzerland came, there was one thing that stood out to me. And he said, if you speak several languages, you have an advantage. And that really stood out because I thought, well, why not try something where I have an advantage? And I would say if you're in a position and you're not really sure what to do, think about where you bring advantages to the industry and also where your successes lie and what you're good at. It's always a great place to start because we live in such a competitive world. So try to look through, areas that you excel in and areas that you have advantages in. And so from there, I decided I was going to give hospitality a try. And what I decided was to take a gap year. And a gap year served several purposes. Number one, that gap year was for me to work. No holiday. It was 1 year of work. The advantage to that is number one, you start making a little bit of money. And that is a great way for you to start to explore financial literacy at an early age. Number two, working in the industry before you actually go on to university and join the industry, you are really testing out to see if this is something that you would be good at or something that you would enjoy. And
Right.
particularly something that you would enjoy. Enjoying yourself while you work is really underrated. And I would really look at that as a good outlook at where you want to go next. Number three, working as before going to university gives you a competitive edge before going into university. Universities are more and more competitive. And for me in particular, they were looking at students to join hospitality schools who had already had some work experience. So that really came in handy. And number four, your initial experience as an intern or as an apprentice during that gap year is going to give you insight into your industry before you start actually studying. So this is what I decided to do, and I felt it was a really good choice. And I think that it's a good piece of advice for young kids, because you don't have to rush. It's better not to rush.
That is so amazing. I love, and here's what I always love hearing about. It's hearing about the non-traditional ways in which people actually go about their careers, their
Mm,
stories, their journeys. A lot of people, I mean, across Asia, especially with our Asian culture, they just get struck with fear when they're not going about things the way they're supposed to be,
mm,
quote unquote. But here you are taking a gap year, taking that level of boldness to just say, hey, I actually want to know what I'm good at. I want to know if this is the right career path. And I know maybe not continuing with school just for this 1 year is really scary.
yeah,
And on top of that, you're a foreigner in another country. So there are actually so many disadvantages. But you took what you had and you took what you're good at and you took whatever advantage you did have and you took what you loved and
yeah.
pursued what you could take. And you also took a lot of learning. You took a lot of initiative in the ways you learned. And that to me is really, really inspiring already. And I'm so excited for the rest of the session in
Thank
which
you.
you will be sharing more technical insights on business and hospitality and how to craft memorable guest experiences. So yeah, I have a couple more questions, but maybe I'll reserve them for towards the end of our session.
Okay.
For audience here, if you have any questions, please do hold them. You can actually type them in the chat box at any point in time, but we will get to it towards the end of the session during our Q&A portion. So yeah, Helena, take it away. Let me pin your presentation already.
Okay, let me just resume my presentation. Let me know if it's working for you.
Totally working. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you everyone for being here, and I'm really honored to be a part of this real world discovery with Own Academy. I personally am really inspired by what Own Academy does, and I'm just very glad to be a part of your mission as well. So before we start today's presentation, I want to ask you all a question. So have you ever held the door open for a stranger? Or have you ever poured tea or water for somebody at your table? Or have you even just showed concern for a friend? Believe it or not, these are all examples of hospitality at work in our daily lives. And essentially, what hospitality is, it covers all cultures and societies, and it is connected to the serving of others, and to serve others with generosity, with your heart, with genuine friendliness, and without expecting anything in return. So with that in mind, let us move on to hospitality as an industry. What are the technicalities and what we do to craft memorable guest experiences? Okay, here we go. So for today's agenda, we'll be looking at the hospitality industry and how it is defined. And then we're going to look at how the hotels are structured and the different departments involved in a hotel. Then we'll look at hotel ratings, especially at luxury hotel ratings, and how a hotel becomes a 5-star or becomes a luxury 5-star hotel. And then we're going to go on to where I specialize in, which is concierge, which is a specific department in a hotel. And we're also looking at how, as a concierge, we craft guest experiences to make them unforgettable. And finally, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on how you can enter the industry if you're interested. And if we have time, hopefully we can do some Q&A at the end. Okay. So the hotel industry, excuse me, a hotel is an establishment that offers overnight accommodation, meals, and other services. And they're mainly aimed at tourists or travelers, and also locals can use them. And the hotel industry and the hospitality industry are terms that are really used interchangeably, But actually, the hotel industry is very specific to hotel accommodation and the related services of the accommodation. Hospitality, on the other hand, as an industry, is a lot more general. It's concerned with leisure, with restaurants, bars, nightlife, tourism services, travel services like tours, helicopters, travel itineraries, etc. So hospitality covers a much broader part of the industry. So now let's look at hotel structure. The hotel is usually divided into two areas: the front of house and the back of house. Front of house basically means that you are interacting with guests and you are facing guests. So within the rooms division, we have the front office or the reception, the concierge, the baggage department, and the guest relations department. Then in the food and beverage side, we have the food and beverage service. So those are the people, the waiters and waitressing at the front line in the restaurant, and also in-room dining. Other frontline departments also include the spa and security. So what about back of house? Back of house, we like to call, in the industry, we call it heart of house, because they are really, really instrumental to the operations of a hotel, but you don't see them. So in the rooms division, that would be housekeeping, reservations, and revenue. And in food and beverage, it's very obvious. It's the chefs, it's the kitchen, it's the food preparation. Then we have the sales and marketing team. So the sales and marketing drive group bookings and all the attention to bringing as many guests as possible to the hotel. And within that division, there's also the catering and sales, such as the banquets, events, and conferences. I would like to note that even though these are back of house, they still have, on occasion, need to face the guests. So, for example, if you're in housekeeping, there will be moments where you will be facing the guest directly. Or in sales and marketing, we have what we call site inspections. So the officer will be showing around a prospective client around the hotel. But in general, they really do stay behind the scenes. After that, we have public relations, engineering, purchasing or procurement, accounts or finance, IT, and human resources. So now let's look at hotel ratings. I'm sure you've heard of the star ratings from 1 star to 5 star. And these are actually put together by the Forbes Travel Guide, which we'll talk about in more detail later on. As you can see, from 1 star to 3 star, the size of the room, the facilities, the information, the languages, and the services are quite limited. But once you move up to the 4-star rating, they become more excessive. So, for example, for room facilities, as a 4-star, you are expected to have at least 2 power outlets in the room, luggage rack, a full-length mirror, a central light switch, a stationary kit, sewing kit, hair dryer, etc. And as a 4-star hotel as well, accessibility becomes more important. You should have a 24-hour reception, baggage assistance, and laundry services. From there, moving up to 5-star quality hotel, the same amenities as the 4-star are included, but you have even more. One detail that I like is that the front or the facade of the hotel has to have some type of flower or plant arrangement. The room has to be bigger than 20 square meters in size. And the facilities in the room are even more extended. That includes bathrobes, mini bars, laptops or printers or faxes available to set up in the room, a shoe shine kit, and toiletries. Then, in terms of tourist offers, we have the concierge department, which is where I specialize, and we're going to talk about that in more detail later on. And As well, language is very important because of the nature of our business. And as I mentioned during the initial interview with Julia, that having more than 2 or 3 languages at your disposal was an advantage for me. So that's expected that at the front line, we need to have at least 3 languages available other than the local language, and also on the website. And finally, even more accessibility, 24-hour reservation systems, valet parking, full service bar, and assistance to the guest up to the room. So as you can see, there's a lot more being evaluated and being included in a 5-star luxury hotel. One moment. All right, so the 5-star luxury industry is really perpetuated by the Forbes Travel Guide. The Forbes Travel Guide is a global rating system that provides ratings for hotels, restaurants, and spas. And they do this through the Forbes auditor. Now, the auditor is usually a set of expert inspectors. They visit a property secretly, and they are testing out hundreds of standards and really focusing on exceptional service. And they come in a couple of times a year to check that your hotel is really living up to that standard. And Mandarin Oriental has, of course, been one of the top-rated hotels in the industry. And this year, in 2023, was awarded the Forbes Travel Awards for luxury hotels. And Mandarin Oriental has been attaining these accolades for many years now. So what is Mandarin Oriental's mission? And I want to give you a little bit of a history of Mandarin Oriental because it has such a long history. First of all, the mission of Mandarin Oriental is to delight and satisfy our guests. And we have a very proud Asian heritage and a very long history. And just to give you an idea of how big of a hotel group we have 37 properties across 25 countries, and we employ more than 11,000 employees. And as we're speaking, along the pipeline over the next 5 years, there are a lot more properties and residences and resorts in the making. And so we're very excited as a group for that. So Mandarin Oriental started really in 1963 as the Mandarin Hotel in Hong Kong. This was our first flagship property. Then in 1974, we acquired our second flagship property, which is the Oriental in Bangkok. And finally, in 1985, we combined the 2 flagships to create the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group. And this year is a very special year because in 2023, we are celebrating 60 years of Mandarin Oriental. And the hotel is preparing a lot of great packages and events to celebrate this year. All right, so now let's move to the concierge, which is my specialty and something I'm really passionate about. I like to put small is great because the concierge is all about the things that we can do to make others feel special and to make their stay even more enjoyable. So let's look at the history of the concierge as a word, the etymology. There are different theories about where the concierge word comes from. The first theory is that it comes from Old Latin, which is cum servus or cum servus, which means fellow servant. And it was believed that in the 18th century, a conservus was a king's officer who was charged with executing justice, maintaining order, and overseeing police and justice records. But my favorite theory is the final one, which is that concierge is a contraction of the French phrase Comte de Cierge, which basically means Count of Candles. And it was believed that the Comte de Cierge was a 19th century servant who was responsible for maintaining the lighting and the cleanliness of a palace. So a really interesting history there. So how does that translate to the present role and the modern guest journey? In modern times, in France, apartment buildings would usually have building managers, and we would call them concierge or portier. And over time, with the rise of leisure tourism, it became common in Europe to have a multilingual, all-purpose personal secretary to assist guests with whatever they needed. And the Swiss achieved the most recognition in this area in terms of concierge services because of their dedication to customer satisfaction, local knowledge, and extensive networks. Finally, in 1952, the French formed an organization of the Union of Concierge of Hotels, which later became known as the Clé d'Or or Golden Keys. Whenever you go to a luxury hotel, pay attention to the concierge department, and you will notice at least one person there with these golden keys crossed along each side of their shoulders. And most countries do have a Golden Keys Association, and Hong Kong also has one. So as a concierge, as we mentioned before, we're looking at customer satisfaction, deep local knowledge, and extensive networks. So how does that work in our job responsibility and what we do on an everyday operational basis? Sorry, guys. So let's look at the guest journey from A to Z. What happens during that time, and how do we grow our trust with the guest and make them have unforgettable experiences? So let's start with the first point, first encounter. In the luxury industry, we have a certain set of expectations. First of all, when a guest is approaching us, we need to acknowledge them immediately by looking up and smiling at them. And once they're close enough, about a meter away, we greet them. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And we ask them, what can we help you with? So once the guest responds with their initial questioning, we should immediately ask them what their name is. How may we address you? And this really sets the pace for a personal interaction with the guest. And as the guest starts to explain their request, it's important for you to listen carefully. And listening also includes paraphrasing their request back to them so that you can show them that you've really understood what they want. And also asking open-ended questions so that their responses can be detailed and you can note them down. And when I say note them down, I mean literally note them down. When you're talking to a guest, even if you're face-to-face with them, your hand should be moving on a notepad, writing down important information about the guest's preferences, the time they have available, their interests, and anything else in between, and applying those notes to the next step. Now, this is the most important part, and it really takes a lot of experience and patience to be able to recommend the right options for the guest. You're going to have to delve into your local knowledge and make personalized recommendations along with tips and advice. The recommendations should have a couple of choices. You want to give the guest some options, and you really want to draw in on your notes and the preferences that the guest has made available to you. But other than that, you also need to understand what type of person the guest is. Just remember, some guests are here to travel and to relax, and some guests are here for business. So the way they interact with you is going to vary. Some people from, let's say, Western countries like America really like to chit chat and really like to have a very casual conversation. But some guests are here for business. They're coming in from the banking industry and they don't have any time for chit chat, and they want direct, immediate recommendations. So you're going to gauge on the guest attitude while you're interacting with them, so that when you do recommend, you're recommending at the pace that they like. All right. So once you've made the recommendation, you also want to wow the guest. And this means that you have to add special touches, going above and beyond their expectations, and also giving some surprises. So this could really range from anything from arranging a complimentary glass of champagne at the restaurant to sending a box of chocolates or tea or fruit to the guest with a handwritten card. And anything that really gives attention to the guest makes them feel important and makes them feel like you see and understand them. And finally, guest satisfaction. Once you've recommended something to the guest, once they come back to the hotel, it's up to you to take the initiative to talk to the guest and ask them about their experience. Ask them about whether or not your recommendations were great. How was the restaurant? What did they think of the food? Most guests are really willing to talk about their experience, both the good parts and the bad parts. And by following up with them immediately in the hotel lobby or on a phone call, you have an opportunity to understand whether your recommendations were correct and how the guests reacted to them. And most importantly, if there's anything that the guest mentions that wasn't up to their expectation or was an unlikely surprise, you can immediately respond by giving them an explanation, talking about what could have made it better, or just giving them a listening ear so they feel that they've been heard. And most guests really just want to feel heard. After the guest checks out, we also have internal surveys that are sent to the guest. And this is an opportunity for us as a business to understand how the guest experience was. And if it was very positive, then great. But if there was any negative points, our management can return to the guest and reach out and try to fix the mistakes and give them opportunities to come back and have a better experience. And finally, positive comments. This is more valuable than any tip a guest can give you. Positive comments are really important because, number one, they really motivate the teams to work hard, because there's nothing more lovely than receiving a guest comment with your name, thanking you for everything that you've done. So it's really motivating for the team. But also as a business, we having this engagement from the guests, whether it's on an internal survey or a public platform like TripAdvisor, pushes the level of the hotel higher and higher up with more positive guest comments and more positive ratings. So this is a very important part of the business aspect. All right. So I hope you have a better idea of what it takes to go through the guest journey and how to make a guest happy. And I'm going to give you some examples now on real life case studies that have happened and real life results from these case studies. All right. So the first case study is the wedding emergency, the broken shoe. Now, there was a guest who was attending a wedding at our hotel. He was not staying at the hotel. He was just an attendee. And he approached myself and a colleague of mine at maybe 10 p.m. at night. And his shoe, the sole of the shoe, was disconnected. So his shoe was broken, basically. And at this time, there were no shops open in Central. There's literally no option outside of the hotel to fix the shoe. And we don't really have this service within the hotel of like a shoe maker or shoe shiner. So what did we do? My colleague and I went down to the engineering office and borrowed a tub of super glue. And we asked the guest, is it okay if we super glue your shoe together? And he was like, yeah, that works. So we super glued the shoe. We put the shoe under a big weight to keep the glue nice and fused. And we waited for 10 minutes, which was the instruction. And as we waited, we chatted with the guest, and he must have had danced too much because his shoe was in a state. And after 10 minutes, the shoe was in perfect condition. And the guy was so happy, and he went back to the wedding and he was very happy, and he said, thank you. But what was amazing is that that simple service that we provided made the guest actually write an email to our general manager, thanking myself and my colleague personally for this service. So we really went above and beyond and used our resources to help a guest in a difficult situation. A second example is the taxi fiasco, Uber to the rescue. Now, Central can be very busy at 6 or 7 p.m. at night with the traffic. And we had 2 in-house guests come to the concierge asking for a taxi. We had arranged a restaurant reservation for them at a top steakhouse in Hong Kong. And they're really excited. They were dressed fantastically. And then they look at the taxi queue, and there must have been about 50 people in line. And in these situations, usually when a guest sees the taxi queue, we usually recommend the guest to use Uber, which is really a quick solution. But this time, the guest said, we don't have Uber. And on top of that, we could tell that the guest was emotional, frustrated, and really worried about making their reservation. So what did my colleague do? She took out her phone and called Uber on her own app and said to the guest, don't worry about it, I'll call the Uber for you. And the Uber was there within 5 minutes. The guest was so appreciative because he really felt that there was nothing they could do to get a taxi at this time. So my colleague really took the initiative to find a solution outside of our regular responsibilities to help a guest that was staying at the hotel. Okay. Number 3, unprepared evening. We have to remember that most guests really are not as prepared as you would expect them to be. And so we act kind of as, I like to say, parents in trying to make sure that the guests are as prepared as they can possibly be. Because if not, they can have a negative experience. So in this case study, there was an in-house guest that came to us and said, we need a taxi to go to Aqua. Now, Aqua is the best restaurant to get, grandiose views of the Victoria Harbor. And we know it's a difficult restaurant to reserve, and it's even more difficult to get a table view next to the window. So when they told us they were going to Aqua, our most natural response was, did you make a reservation? And we found out that the guest didn't make a reservation. And so we told them, it's really best that we call them first, and we can try to reserve a seat for you. And in engaging with the guests, we also realized that the guests were here on their honeymoon. So this was really a special occasion for them. So we called the restaurant, and we managed to get a window view for them, sat right at the window where they could get the best views of Hong Kong. And without letting the guests know, we also secretly arranged a complimentary glass of champagne for the guest at the table, which would be arranged by our concierge. And before the guest left in the taxi, we also made additional recommendations because they're on a romantic honeymoon getaway. We said, right next to the restaurant is the Chim Sha Tsui promenade. So that's a really nice way to have a stroll after dinner because it's really romantic, it's safe, and you get really phenomenal views. And we also added that to top off the night, they could take the Star Ferry back to the Central Pier, which would be also a really nice way to get the night air and to see Hong Kong from the Victoria Harbor. So as you can see, one simple question about a taxi turned into something much bigger. We took an initial request and we did so much more for them. And this is what it means to be proactive and to think for the guest in their shoes. And finally, we liaised with the guest relations team. And because we knew the guests were having dinner outside, while they were gone, we arranged a box of chocolates and some roses in the room. So really, from beginning to end, we took absolute ownership of this guest experience and made a simple request into something amazing and unforgettable for them. Finally, we're looking at unhappy guests. Unfortunately, in this line of work, unhappy guests are a part of the business. But the key is not about avoiding it completely, but it's about how we can respond to the guest after the issue has occurred. So the story behind this is a guest was checking out, and we asked the guest how was their stay. And the guest said everything was great, but there was one issue. I was having dinner at the cafe, and my friend was having dinner with me, and she wanted to pay for a bottle of wine for us to share. So she wanted to give her a gift of wine, but the waiter didn't understand what they were trying to do, and the waiter insisted that they charge that bottle of wine to the guest room. But the guest didn't want to pay for the wine. Her friend wanted to pay for it. And even though they explained over again, the waiter still didn't understand. And at the end of the day, they gave up and they charged the bottle of wine to her room. So once the guest told us the story, we had to have an immediate reaction. First and foremost, listening to the guest and showing empathy is really important. Explaining to the guest that we understand their frustration and that we sincerely apologize for their experience is the first step to getting the guest to calm down emotionally and to feel like somebody is listening to them and paying attention to them. Secondly, we reversed the charge of the wine and took the wine out of the room bill, which the guest really appreciated. And we also offered her a box of chocolates in a takeaway bag as a token of our sincere apologies. And finally, we asked her if our duty manager could arrange a call with her later in the afternoon to talk about the issue and to gauge on the guest's emotional level at that point. So even though the guest had a negative experience, we were able to turn it around by listening to the guest, reacting to the guest by taking off the charge, offering something to the guest that would show our apology, and also asking or promising a follow-up on the situation. Now, this was a rare occasion that the guest actually left a positive comment for the colleague who had reacted and responded to her initial complaint upon checkout. So this is a great example to show that even with a negative experience, we can actually turn it into a positive experience. And that's what happened in this case study. So to conclude, we really, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're really serving others with our heart, with friendliness, with generosity, because guests we have to remind ourselves, they are human beings. They are not just a room number or just a dollar sign. These are people, and they require human connection and emotional connection. Just imagine that the person standing in front of you, the guest in front of you, is not just a guest. Imagine it was a family member or a friend or a teacher visiting. You would really want to make sure that everything was perfect. So we really encourage our teams to always consistently go above and beyond for our guests so that we can show them how much we care about their experience and make them have really truly unforgettable guest experiences. So to conclude, I would like to give you some tips and advice on how you can join the industry if you're interested. And I'll just take a sip of water. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. So first and foremost, if you want to join the industry, you can do so. The easiest way is through entry-level jobs. Now, entry-level positions in hospitality are easy to find no matter your education level. There are very low barriers to entry, and we're looking at jobs like in the baggage department as a porter, valet parking, banqueting, waitressing. Those are all entry-level positions that really do not require any specific level of education. But the key is that as you move forward and upwards in your career, that you are patient and you persevere through those jobs. I always like to say that there is no such thing as a small job, just a small attitude. Once you graduate from university or you finish high school, most likely you will not be at a high level position. You are going to start out at the very bottom. But it's important that you don't treat your title or your position in a negative way just because it isn't a management position. You have to respect and value your job because all jobs are valuable, regardless of the level of it. And if you can show that your attitude and your work ethic is dedicated to the happiness of the guests, is dedicated to teamwork, then you can easily move up in the ranks over the years. I would also mention that, especially in this industry, if you do want to move forward and upwards, to focus on your communication skills and language skills. So that's not just about languages, but communication in general, how you communicate to guests, how you communicate to your team, and how you communicate with your managers. Those are all interpersonal skills and soft skills that are really important to drive your career forward, regardless of the industry. Another way to join the industry is through internships, and those are always available especially in hotels. And you can apply right after high school or as a gap year or during the summer break at university, which is what I did. And the goal, I would say, at this period in your career is to really try to expose yourself to as many different departments as possible. You really, at this stage, don't know exactly what your interests are specifically. So it's important to try out as many departments as possible so you have an idea of what's available to you. And finally, local offers. You don't necessarily need to start out in a hotel. You can look for restaurants and tourism services in your area, which will allow you to build your skill set in hospitality. And engage with guests, whether it's be in a travel agency or as a tour guide, any type of job that focuses on the tourist and the guest will be a great way to start to advance your career. And finally, I would really love to give some examples of people within our hotel group who really are great examples of what it means to work up in your career. Mr. Danny Lai, he was my mentor when I was a management trainee. And when he retired as the executive assistant manager, which was his position for over a decade. Now, executive, meaning that he was on the executive committee of the hotel alongside general managers and directors. And he was a very respected colleague, and not only in the hotel, but in the industry. And he took care of literally kings and queens and diplomats and the highest level of VIP guests that you can imagine. He would take care of them personally. But guess what? His first job at Mandarin Oriental was as a porter in the baggage department. They literally chose him because he was strong enough to carry luggages from the taxi to the check-in to the hotel room. So with his attitude, with his work ethic, and with his dedication, he spent more than 30 years in this hotel, moving up consistently through the ranks and retiring as one of the top executives in our hotel. And that really goes to show that what you need to succeed is about the opportunity, is about your attitude, is about your work ethic and your perseverance and dedication. Another great example is our Chief People Officer, Amanda Heineman. When she first joined as general manager of our property in Hong Kong, she told us the story about her first job, which was in the stewarding department. Now, stewarding, if you don't know what it is, it's the department related to dishwashing, all right? Not a very glamorous job, but in a hotel like ours, with 9 food and beverage outlets, we're looking at thousands of plates and cutleries and glassware a day being washed. This is a crucial part of our organization, of our operations. And Amanda's first job was a part of this department. And from there, she moved forward in her career. She got a further education, and now she is our Chief People Officer. So again, there is no such thing as a glamorous job or an unglamorous job. There is just a job, and it's up to you to decide how you want to value yourself and value that job, because everybody's job is important and everybody's job is respectable. Thank you so much, everyone. We can now move on to our Q&A session. Here is my information. If you have any questions, you can just send me an email. I'd be more than happy to answer, or check me out on LinkedIn as well.
That was so wonderful, Helena. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. I was so personally inspired, and I loved hearing all about these different case studies, these different ways you've had to solve problems in your day-to-day life. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this session. I'm seeing some comments as well of some of others enjoying this session. I also didn't know that it was so technical, the rating system and the 5 stars, as well as just the different new terms I've had to learn, like front of house and back of house. And I mean, this is so great, and it made me want to be part of the concierge team also. But
Thank you.
To the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box at any point in time. And while we're waiting for the audience to type in any questions that they may have, I just have a couple of my own. So I saw some of the information that you shared, the stories that you've had to share about the day-to-day challenges you face with different types of guests. And all of this is really to improve the business. So I just want to know exactly what your day-to-day looks like. Aside from, I'm sure you're not always facing these challenges, right? I'm sure it's different all throughout. So yeah, maybe you can share a little bit more about what your day-to-day looks like.
Well, day to day, every day is completely different, but it's still a little bit the same. You are really multitasking. So we have our emails coming in. And so we have emails from various departments coming in, guest emails, to book transportation, a lot of transportation bookings. We're also answering calls at the same time, so responding to guest questions, but also many guests are asking for bookings for restaurants, for
Right.
tour guides, or from some ideas on how to spend their day. And at the same time, you're also at the front desk, so you are engaging with people walking by, people asking you questions. So it's really a lot of multitasking, and you really have to maintain a very positive outlook, no matter how stressed you are or how
Right.
much is happening. Even if you have 100 emails to deal with, you have to constantly look up and acknowledge every guest that walks by. And that is much more difficult than it sounds, actually.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, so really just respond a lot of the like the case studies, those type of situations, guests asking for ideas, restaurant bookings, you know. So yeah, just a lot of multitasking, and also a lot of communication with other departments. We're communicating with the reception, we're communicating with the guest relations and with the reservations team. They're calling us to ask questions as well. We have a chat box as well that we have to respond to. So yeah, just really focusing on the guest, and really, no matter how busy you are, just focusing on what's at task in front of you and making the guests feel special when they're talking to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And yeah, I just have just while you were talking, I'm so curious. It's just a personal question.
Yeah.
Can you be effective at the concierge if you are an introvert? I mean, it just seems like you have to face people all the time and speak all the time and communicate with all departments all the time. I am an introvert, so that's the only thing that scares me.
Oh, okay, so that's a really good question. And I know it doesn't seem like it, but I am also an introvert. All right. I am one of the shyest people you'll ever meet. And I'm not that talkative in social situations. What I've managed to learn over the years is that, first of all, I've observed other concierge managers and concierge team members and tried to emulate what they were doing and how they were talking. And it's not just, even if you're shy, you should know that it is a little bit of an art and there is a science behind it. You're not just engaging with the guests without any information or any training. You know exactly what is expected of you, and that makes it really easier to engage with the guest and ask the right questions. You're not asking questions at a social event. You're asking specific questions pertaining to the guest experience. So you do have a set of rules. And what you do is, over time, you just get used to it. And you realize that it's not the end of the world if you didn't ask, you didn't conversate with the guests and have the best chat ever. As long as you focus on their needs, that's what helps you get through those difficult moments. And at the end of the day, if you are an introvert and you are at the concierge, that's okay as well. Guests like personalities. They don't all, some guests like a really extroverted concierge to help them. But some guests really like that demure, shy person who's good at their job. So your personality is important to the role. You have to be yourself. And it's not absolutely necessary to be an extrovert. As long as you do the job well, you should be fine.
Sounds really, really cool. And that's also very encouraging for people like us and to all the other students out there who are also curious about that. I just have a question here. Her name's Jean, and her question is, just curious, if a guest's request is truly impossible, how do you say no? So I'm also curious about this.
Okay, that is a very good question, and actually, that ties in directly with one of our pillars. So within the group, the hotel group, we have what we call pillars, and these are core beliefs within the operations on how to deal with certain situations, and it ties back to our mission of delighting and satisfying our guests. So one of the pillars is we never say no. But if we need to say no, we offer alternatives. So that answers your question. We really try to avoid saying no as much as possible. Unless it's literally impossible, as your question asked, then we need to find alternatives for the guests that would meet their expectations. Um, so for an example, let's say a guest wants a pressing service immediately. So that means sending the laundry items to be pressed, which is like a high level ironing through the laundry department. It takes a couple of hours, and the guest says, I need it immediately. So in this case, we can't give you the pressing immediately, but we can give you an iron and ironing board. Now, obviously, it's not the same thing, but if the guest really needs a shirt pressed immediately and we don't have the time to give it at least another 3 hours, then we can at least offer an ironing board. And we explain to the guests, we're really sorry, but unfortunately, this takes a bit longer time, even with an express service. So we need to show empathy and make sure that the guest understands what we have available in our resources.
So very, very cool. I like that. I feel like that should be applied in everything. I can't say no, but if you do have to provide alternative solutions. And I think that's just basic, that's customer service that not a lot of businesses actually get to do. And so a lot of businesses actually fail because they fall short in that. But here it's such a huge practice here. It is really part of your habits, and it's now come in terms, it's just really just excellence, pure excellence from your side. So that's really cool. I have time for just one last question. So sorry for anybody who has to go, feel free. But for anyone who wants to stay, we just have one last question. It's from Diane. Her question is, you seem like a very empathetic person. How did you develop this skill? So basically, another question that I'd like to add on is, what kind of soft skills or hard skills do you have to know and learn to be able to get into the hospitality industry?
Okay, thank you for that question, Diane. I did notice it, and I thought it was really interesting. In terms of my personality, I think I've always been a very compassionate or empathetic person by nature. And there could be many reasons for this that I probably won't go into. But empathy is important in all aspects of business, because no matter what business you're doing, you are working with other people. And so empathy as a skill to develop, it really requires you to think about others more than yourself. So when a new colleague is struggling, or when a guest is frustrated, or when a manager is unhappy, it's that point that you have to put your ego aside and put yourself in the shoes of other people. And that took a lot of experience, because when you start off as an intern or as a new colleague, when you're that young, a lot of it is about yourself. You want to be good. You want to be noticed. You want to be this and that. You want to grow. But as I started working more and more, I realized that it had very little to do with my skills, and it had to do with my team. It had to do with my personal communications with other people. So an example of that is, let's say another department colleague, let's say from reservations, has made a mistake in the date of the booking for transportation, which can happen because there's just so many flights, so many people booking transports. And, maybe your initial, and the mistake that your colleague made caused you to make a mistake. And it might be very easy for you to react and maybe call that colleague and say, get frustrated at them, even yell at them, because you feel that you've lost face and you feel that your boss is not going to respect you anymore. But you have to realize that you've made mistakes as well. And the best thing to do when someone makes a mistake is for someone to support you, to give you the right advice so that they don't make the mistake again, and to make sure that their confidence isn't affected by their mistake, because confidence is key. So you will find that as you experience this, as you grow more in the company, having empathy and having compassion actually builds the team stronger and actually builds the intercommunication and interdepartmental communication stronger. And that's what drives the business to be more efficient and more effective. And it allows you to work together in a better way for the guests. So it's all positive at the end. You don't have to be on your high horse shouting at other people to be effective. It's actually the opposite of effective.
Yeah, that is amazing. You guys have so much authority just in being kind and gentle and good and being excellent overall. And that's something that I really appreciate about the industry that you are part of. It's just excellence through and through. It's just being respectful and being so courteous. And it's really part of your industry, but it's just, just being able to see that in other human beings, just really practice it in every little way, in every little manner, in every little good morning, in every service of tea. Anything that you do whatsoever embodies that, and that's why this particular industry is just so inspiring to me. So again, thank you so much for today. I think that wraps up our Q&A for today. Thank you so much, Helena, for the time that you've taken, as well, really presenting and sharing all of this information with us. Before everybody goes, I'd like to just very quickly share my screen. Please, if you do have any feedback regarding this session, feel free to just scan this QR code and provide your feedback, any ideas, any suggestions on how we can improve, any comments that you might have, just to make sure that if it's great comments, if you just want to share how this session has inspired you, feel free to do that as well. We love to read everything about it. So thank you so much for, again, taking this time with us. And Helena, thank you as well for all that you've done.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Helena.